the book starts with a wonderful story about the then 65-year-old academic, Jeff Hinton, conducting a quite bizarre auction by email, playing off some of the world's biggest technology companies as they battle to purchase his company. This was in 2012, and it's a pretty remarkable story, and not one I think that had been told before. What was so special about it?
Well, it hasn't been told before, and it's so special, as you say, that the book had to begin this way, right? Lots of times you struggle over how to begin a story, certainly how to begin a book. But once I realized what had really happened in 2012, this is just how it had to begin. A lot has been written over the years in the tech press and the mainstream press about Jeff Hinton and about this paper that he and two of his students penned in the summer of 2012, really, and released that fall. And it's become known as the AlexNet paper after one of his students. But Jeff was a professor at the University of Toronto. He and two of his students essentially built a system that could recognize objects and images. So recognize flowers and cars and people. And it could do this with an accuracy that was beyond anything else that had ever been developed. And they used this one idea to do it, a neural network, which had been around since the 50s, and we can go into that. But this was a real inflection point for that idea, an idea that would go on to change so many aspects of the AI community, of the tech industry, of our everyday lives, not just with image recognition, but so many other things. And in that moment, after releasing this paper, Jeff, and this is the last thing you would expect from him if you knew him, he decided to auction his services and the services of his two students to the highest bidder. He puts together the company solely to sell his own services to these very large tech companies. So he knows he's got the technology, and but really he's got the talent. He and his two students, work in this area that he really believes in, that few other people work in, right? And there are many reasons for that we can go into. But he has an offer from a company in China, and he realizes that his talent can command a lot more. And so he creates this company not to build a product, but solely to sell his services. And right. It was, a surprising move. And it leads to a dramatic moment when he and his two students are in Lake Tahoe for what was then and still is a very important AI conference. But then it just gets more amazing and takes twists and turns that you just don't expect from there.
Now, I mean, it is amazing in so many different ways, because Hinton is an academic. Yet he has this commercial sensibility that constructs this company and then constructs this auction and manages to bring three of the world's largest companies together to play a game of ping pong over the course of a couple of days, each increasing their bids one against another in what is, I mean, you tell the story fantastically, so I don't want to give away too much. Equally, I'm desperate to give away some of the details, but it's quite nerve-wracking, and I could really feel. I remember thinking to myself, I wish I had his chutzpah to keep pushing this.
I'm with you. I wish I had that chutzpah too. I do not, and especially as you learn who Hinton is over the course of the book, and as I learned who he was after spending time with him, it really, in a way, goes against his personality. And then his personality comes back out at the end of this story, right? I'm excited to get this out into the world as well, because it's a real human story, right? It shows you who this person is, and we could talk for 10 podcasts about Jeff Hinton. He's a remarkable person in many ways. We haven't even talked about the fact that the man literally does not sit down and how this
That's
plays
right.
into this story.
Right, because he had an injury when he was younger and wasn't able to sit down for a while. Is that right? That was a detail?
When he was 19 and living in his native England, he was moving a space heater for his mother, and this was in the 60s, and it was filled essentially with bricks, and he slipped a disc, and this caused enormous problems for him later in life. By his late 50s, it really hampered his ability to do his work. There are some incredible stories about his students, trying to defend their thesis while he's stretched out, on his desk or in a cot by the wall in his
Right.
office, because he had such problems with the back. And this is also how his mind works. He realized that the only way to deal with this and continue with his work was to literally stop sitting down. That means he can't drive a car. He can't fly on an airplane because the commercial airlines make you sit during takeoff and landing. So in order to get to this auction in Lake Tahoe from Toronto, he's got to take a bus to New York, lay on the back seat,
Right.
then take a train across the country to Truckee, California, and then get into a taxi and lay in the back seat of the taxi to get up the mountain to Lake Tahoe. And this is
Right.
just part of the extremes that he's willing to go to.
I've done that last drive from Truckee up to Tahoe a few times. It's not something you want to take lying horizontally on the back seat of any kind of vehicle, let alone a taxi.
You know how it is then.
Yeah.
It's a remarkable metaphor, and these are always the best metaphors when they are just flat out real, right? A remarkable metaphor for the lengths that he would go to get this idea out into the world.